Okay, we're live. So, guys, we're here with Courtney Blair. She wasn't able to get her laptop out, but she adapted. She got her phone. She downloaded the app. So, thanks for doing that. So I'm really excited. First of all, I just want to if you guys are watching this in the future, give me a hashtag future so I know if you're on the replay. If you're live, give me a hashtag live. So I want to talk about mainly because it seems like you're a pro at this, helping people get on podcasts, like the whole outreach, the strategy, how to land interviews,
Right.
and such. So, super excited to dive into those topics. But before we get into that, can you explain firstly to people what you do, why you're awesome, and who are some big connections you have or people that you work with that might this is your time to brag, pretty much.
Yeah, definitely. So I own Zippy. Zippy Content's my baby. We're going on 2 years of business. What we do is we represent authors, entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants. Basically, all my clients are in the online space somehow, and they need more visibility, more clients, a larger audience, to be more of an authority in their field, stuff like that. So what we do is we find them interviews on podcasts. So we work with people across the niches. We started with authors first. That was my first targeted client, were authors. So we've got huge connections with it across the realms, basically, so to speak. So yeah, I mean, the way that we do things is we have a network of podcasters that we work with regularly, that is about to hit 600 podcasters that we have placed guests on their shows, and we have a relationship with their teams and stuff like that. So that's our sturdy network. But we also have a team of girls who they're just going through and building relationships with new podcasters every day. So basically, our clients are able to kind of custom tailor their podcast tours, let us know which shows they'd like to be on. We can include them in our outreach for them as well. So it's a great gig we've got going on for sure. And really, depending, all of my clients are in it for a different reason. You know what I mean? Some people, they only want to be on the big dog shows that are, top 100 in their niche or whatever. And then some of them want to go on every show. And so we're really flexible when it comes to just what your goal is. What I would say the most important thing is, if I'm finding you interviews or if you're finding yourself interviews, is making sure that the shows that you're reaching out to are in alignment with your message, and that your message is in alignment with their audience. You want to be obviously people that you're going to get a return on your investment of time and even money. So that's my biggest tip, I would say, for sure, is making sure that the shows that you're reaching out to are in alignment. But there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen behind the scenes before you're going to be able to really get a return on your investment by doing a lot of interviews. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people understand. A lot of people they just want to get onto shows, and they're really really great at talking about what they do, and they're probably great at doing what they do, but they don't have the back end processes dialed in to really make sure that the traffic that they get from these interviews don't dissipate. You know what I mean? So I always tell my clients, make sure that if you have a blog, that thing is going all the time. Make sure that if you have a vlog, if you're on YouTube or whatever, you're just communicating with your audience, as much as you possibly can while you're directing traffic to yourself, so they see what you're doing. You know what I mean? Not everybody's going to buy from you right away, so you're going to gain followers and, authority by being interviewed by experts. And, so there's a lot of stuff that happens, but first you got to make sure that this stuff is dialed in so that it can work for you.
Cool. Well, you kind of covered a lot of questions that I'm gonna ask, so we're gonna dive a little deeper soon. But what's up, Leslie and Shay? We have a question here too, but I'll save it towards the end.
Okay.
I'm getting a little laggy here. I don't know why. I hope it's not too bad. But firstly, before we kind of get into the questions, why did you get into the podcasting space, and how long ago was it?
So it's a funny story. Honestly, this whole thing kind of was placed in my lap. So I've been running this as a business representing a lot of people for about 2 years, but I actually started finding podcast interviews about 4 years ago. My dad was my very first client. He basically just hired me and was paying me hourly to find him interviews. And I spent a couple years just doing that for him and building a network and kind of learning how to track the interviews from confirmation through to recording, how to handle booking, you know what I mean? And like just proper ways to do outreach. I mean, it was messy at first and it was definitely very primitive and, you know, so bringing in a team is kind of what helped me out with that the most, honestly. But yeah, so I wasn't too sure what I was doing when I first started doing this for my dad. I didn't even understand, like, I understood that a podcast was like an internet radio show, you know, but I didn't understand how he was using it as a business tool. I didn't understand the value of it. You know what I mean? So there was a lot of stuff that it just started off kind of bumpy. And I think that's how a lot of entrepreneurs are in the very beginning. It's just like, let's just go. And they just start going and it's really messy in the beginning. So yeah, it's been about 4 years going. Now I've got a great team who they've really just kind of taken my business and just flipped it around to make it work more optimally and for everybody involved, you know. So and there was definitely some outreach flubs for me in the beginning as well, reaching out to the wrong people by just, you know, being misinformed, stuff like that, you know. So there's a lot of research that needs to go into outreach when it comes to that stuff, I would say.
Okay, and do you kind of for your clients do any other types of media or right now, or is it just podcasting?
Our podcasting is our bread and butter,
Okay.
definitely. We do come across other media opportunities just because we're doing so much outreach and we're working with so many different types of people. So, you know, if we happen to come across something cool, we always let our clients know. And you know, and we can even do targeted outreach for other types of media if that's something that somebody wants. It's just not something that we've had a lot of requests for because, you know, podcasting. I mean, it's all package right now, you know.
So I'm curious. You said earlier that people who want to be guests on podcasts, they do it for different reasons. What are the reasons they do it for? And also, someone who doesn't really know like the benefits of being a guest on a podcast, like how would you lay that out to them if they're like skeptical? So that's a two-part question, kind of. But
Can you repeat that? Sorry, I lost you for a second. You were kind of in and out.
okay.
There we go. That's better.
Okay, awesome. I'll break up the question because it was two parts. But
Okay.
you said that the people you work with, they have different reasons for wanting to be on podcasts. What do you see those reasons are? So
one of the things that I've been noticing is a lot of my clients have course launches and book launches that they have coming up that they want to do a lot of interviews for really quickly. It is possible for people to find their own interviews and it kind of goes a little bit of at a slower pace. A lot of my clients are like, I have this launch coming up in 4 months. I need to do this many interviews. Boom, 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 boom. And we like line it up for them really quickly. So that's one of the big things that we're gaining popularity in is just launches in general. Some of my other clients, most of my clients we've been working with for going on 2 years that have just been steadily doing interviews regularly. Some of them just want to become more of an authority in their field. Some of them want to grow their audiences, which could kind of be the same thing. You know what I mean? Some of them are directing traffic to their podcast from other podcasts. You know, so there's a lot of different reasons why somebody might want to get onto a podcast. Definitely, I would say book launches and course launches are a huge one right now.
okay, sure. And for someone who's skeptical, kind of, and I see it a lot too, people who should be doing it who aren't, and
oh yeah,
they're skeptical. What would you tell them, like why guest podcasting is awesome? Like how do you convince them?
Well, I think that the reason why a lot of them are skeptical is because it's kind of hard to gauge exactly what is coming in off of one podcast. You know what I mean? And it's an investment of time for sure. You know, so there's a few things that come up that they're like, you know, I just don't know. I'm not convinced. And it's like, really what I tell them is when I'm getting on these calls, if they don't think that they're going to pull in the revenue or pull in whatever return on their investment that they're looking for, chances are they won't be able to. You know what I mean? And I don't mean to sound like harsh, but it's like my clients that are being really successful, they have all of their stuff dialed in. You know what I mean? They have their book funnels. They have ways for people to follow them. They're communicating with their audiences regularly. And if somebody is getting onto podcasts and they're not doing any promoting of that podcast, they're not repurposing any of the content, they're not going live with the podcaster, like there's a lot of stuff that kind of has to happen outside of the interview in order to make it really, really gain traction in your favor, I think. And you don't necessarily have to do this. Like, I think with a lot of the much larger shows, it's a little bit different, but you know, there's just some stuff that needs to happen on the back end, I think, for sure. And so what I tell people that have those rebuttals is, you know, you're probably right. You know, I mean, really, it's like, you know, it doesn't work for everybody. And that's something that I like to be super clear about, is that if you know, you could get onto, especially if you're doing this for yourself and you're not paying very much attention to alignment, you could get onto a show that has a large audience, but if it's not the right audience for you, it's not going to gain the right traction. And that's where the professionals need to come in and say, we see you, this is your message, and then we know this podcaster and we know their message, you know what I mean? And we know who their audience is, you know? So, and it's not impossible to do on your own. It just takes a lot of research, for sure.
Yeah. People need to understand, like, it's just the bottom step of a value ladder. It's not the whole business model. So do you ever, like, the relationships you have with people you help get on their podcast, do you ever like ask them for numbers, like, afterwards, like, or is that nothing?
In terms of downloads?
Yeah.
I have clients who do. I mean, it's not something that I personally do, just because I mean, it's not something that I'm super concerned about for myself. You know what I mean? I'm happy to be getting onto the show and to be speaking to people, no matter how large or small the audience is. I think that I'm always speaking to the right audience, and, you know, it doesn't really matter what size it is. That's not how everybody thinks, though. You know what I mean? Some people, they want to be on the large shows, and so, yeah, they'll ask about all that stuff, and it's not a problem.
But I mean, like, afterwards, do they ever ask?
Yeah,
like,
just like what the traction was.
Yeah.
You know what? Most of the time, the podcasters will let us know.
Okay.
They'll say, hey, like, this episode's doing really well. It's had this many downloads. We haven't really had to ask very often. I mean, we can. It's not something we like. It's out of the question. And I'm sure it's common too.
Yeah, I was just curious. And you say, so the people that you help get on podcast, you tell them to promote the podcast as well, even if it's not theirs, or you recommend?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. I think that it definitely helps to direct traffic from that show. You know what I mean? If they're promoting that show and saying, hey, I'm on this show, check it out. I mean, yeah, it couldn't hurt anything at all. And honestly, for a lot of the podcasters that are in my network, they are also in it for the shared visibility. You know what I mean? So it's just a courtesy. It's a common courtesy, really.
Yeah. So let's say someone's like, they're convinced they want to start becoming a guest on podcast. What are kind of like the first things, like checklists, before they even start doing outreach, to make sure they're like maximizing success?
Website is number one. That's like a huge one for some reason. I talk to people and we get on this call and everything's great. And then it's like, oh, well, I don't have a website. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, that's definitely got to happen. There's no way I can find you interviews if you don't have a website. So that's like first and foremost. And I mean, these people they do their research on their guests. You know what I mean? So they're going to check out your website. They're going to read your blog. They're going to look at your social media channels. You know what I mean? So just being conscious from a PR perspective, in terms of everything that you're doing. And I'm not saying go like be pinkies up, like perfect all the time or anything like that. If you look at my Facebook, I'm a mess most of the time. You know what I mean? But still, you know, there's definitely some things that to be considered for sure when you know that you're going to be directing traffic to yourself. And when you know that people are going to be checking you out to interview you on their show.
Okay. So let's say they have a website. Is there anything else, or they're ready to rock and roll?
I mean, no, definitely. I would say have an end game in terms of what your goal is and where you're directing traffic. I mean, obviously, you know, website's great, and that's going to be where some of the traffic is going. But if you have a book or a course or a blog, like a lot of these people that I work with have all of these things, you know what I mean? And so they ask me, like, what should I be promoting on each show? And it's really a matter of what do you think the audience is going to latch on to the best? You know what I mean? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers it. No, that's good. That's good. Okay. So let's say they have kind of like where they know where they want to direct people. How would you, like, what resources and tools do you use to start building your, like, you know, your hit list, so to speak? Like, do you just use iTunes, or is there any other special websites? Are you going for their email? Like, are you doing like a carpet bomb when you try to reach out to people, or?
So we have our network that we work with all the time that is going on 600 that I just told you about.
Okay.
So when we begin outreach, those are the first people that we talk to.
Gotcha.
And so what we do is we just say, hey, to each of my team basically does a launch. We call it a launch, and they go through our network, and they just send this person's information to each of the relevant podcasters in our network that might want to interview them. So that's the first thing we do. And then from there, my team that is doing outreach to podcasters we've never worked with, they have them. They're just going. You know what I mean? They're building relationships with podcasters with all of our clients in mind, going, this guy's great, this guy's great, this guy's great. And then we do a relaunch essentially once the person has accepted being a part of our network. So outreach for us is a little bit complicated. If you're doing it on your own,
Yeah, for someone doing it on their own, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be
database.
concerned. Don't be concerned about numbers in terms of like, I need to reach out to 200 podcasters, and bombing them. Like, that's the wrong way to go. I trust me, like I in the very beginning, there was a couple messy outreach campaigns that happened, pissed a lot of people off, you know what I mean? And it took a little bit to kind of rebuild those relationships because they get pissed. I mean, it's just email. You'd think that they would not get that upset about it, but honestly, people get really upset. So definitely just doing your research. If you only reach out to 1 or 2 people per day, that is great. And that just those interviews alone would be great. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Don't focus on quantity, focus on quantity if you're doing it on your own for sure.
Quality, okay.
Quality, quality, not quantity.
So what's the wrong way to do it, like you said, that you did, So
definitely carpet bombing is wrong. I would say that people it's spammy, even if you know that you're sending, if you're just like auto sending to 200 people, even if you know that all of those 200 people are going to be relevant to what you have to say, they're still going to know that you are just blasting an email. And it's really impersonal. Yeah, it's really impersonal, and they want a relationship. You know what I mean? They want to know that you looked at their show, maybe even that you checked out an episode. Hey, I loved this interview where you interviewed this person. Your show's great. I would love to be a guest on your show. Here's what I'm up to. You know what I mean? Like that's the much better way to go about it, and you're going to get much better results, and they're going to respect you a lot more.
Yeah. So what's like the simple formula that you would recommend people to use when they're doing outreach in an email? Like, how would you structure it? Like intro, then like compliment, then what do you send them? You send like a press page or something?
I think that people like to be emailed as almost like a friend. You know what I mean? Like that's the way I see it, is like I even notice for myself, like when I'm just opening emails, a lot of them, the ones that are spam that get me are the ones that are like, hey, what's up? How have you been? And it's like, it almost seems like a friend's writing me. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm not saying that you like, I'm just saying it's definitely like a good way to go to just kind of frame it to where you are building a relationship with this person and you're not just pitching yourself right off the bat.
So what's like the first? So what do you try to do? Like, what's the goal with the first email?
Just say, hey, I really enjoy your show. You've got a great message. And it's in alignment with what I'm up to. You know what I mean? Just open the conversation. Maybe even find them on social media. That's a great way to go. You know what I mean? And just say, hey, I just wanted to reach out and let you know that I love your show. I'm a big fan. And I'd be happy to be a part of your network. You know what I mean? Like it's just relationship building. It's all it is. And I would never look at it as like you're just pitching yourself.
Gotcha. And so you asked them pretty much in the first email if you'd like to be on their show or no?
Well, the way my team does it is different because they're just asking podcasters if they'd like to be a part of our network. Okay. You know what I mean? So we're not just pitching people. We did do that for a while, and it did work in some cases, but we changed it up, so we're just building relationships with people first and foremost. And it's our network has grown substantially since we started doing that. So it's all been trial and error for us.
Gotcha. So for someone who isn't trying to build a network, how would you do it?
Still just focus on the relationship. I mean, if you're going to be on this person's show, you're going to be speaking with them and, you want to have a connection with them. And so, definitely just set up a networking call, set up a pre-interview, whatever, just keep it very relaxed. And definitely you want to provide information on yourself, but wait for the right moment. Don't make it seem like you're just pitching, you know what I mean?
Gotcha.
So that's the best advice I can give for sure. It's yielded us a lot of results.
No, it's really good advice. I appreciate it. What's up, John? What happens if they say no, or if they're not interested? Do you ever like follow
No.
up after a certain time, or
No, I
um,
mean, most of the time, if somebody says no, it's for a reason. It's because they're not in alignment. So we just kind of go with it. That's okay if they say no. It's no big deal. You know what I mean? And
okay,
happy to stay friends. And send each other business. It's as I could say this a billion times. It's all about the relationship. You know what I mean? That doesn't mean that it couldn't be some sort of synergy in the future. So these podcasters are wonderful because they're not just podcasters. You know what I mean? And if they're talking to their audience about something that's relevant to you, chances are what they're doing is relevant to you. Outside of the podcast. You know what I mean? So the relationship is the most important thing.
gotcha. And what kind of information? So let's say they're ready. You have a relationship, and they ask you to be in the show. What kind of well, even before they say yes, how would you position yourself to like make it so it seems like you're a value of them to them?
I mean, really that just kind of depends on the person and what they're promoting. You know what I mean? Really, like that's really what I would it comes down to being kind of customized at that point. You know what I mean?
I mean, like, do you
To
usually
the
send them
individual.
like a bio and like talking points or stuff?
Yeah, definitely. A bio and talking points are definitely all the things that we include when it comes to just, telling the person, basically establishing the value with the podcaster to our client. You know what I mean? So yeah, we send them a bio, headshots, previous interviews if they have any, social media channels, any information that you could possibly include. I mean, that's where like a one sheet comes in handy if you have a one sheet, so any media stuff like that you have.
Gotcha. What's up, guys? If you're on live, we have a few people here. Give me hashtag
Hi
live.
guys.
Ask your questions below for Courtney while she's here. She's super smart. What kind of softwares you think are crucial in this process to help ease people's lives that you use or you help people use or integrate?
I would say, I mean, when it comes to outreach, as I mentioned, quality, not quantity. So I don't think that there's any type of special tools that you need for outreach other than an email, and just being able to kind of go through the podcaster's website and find the right person to get in contact with. There's going to be some time invested in this for sure. But when it comes to tracking your interviews, once you get the confirmations and you say you have 5 interviews in the works, it starts to get kind of hairy.
Yeah.
It starts to get a little confusing, and then they all have different ways of recording, and you know what I mean? So we use Trello. A lot of people have heard of it. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's just like a productivity app. We use Trello to track them from confirmation through to recording. So that's what I would recommend. If not Trello, something that's similar. You have to tell me, by the way, if I'm like not pointing. I can't see anything on
No,
the
you're
screen.
good.
So you
You're
have to
good.
tell me, okay. Okay, yeah. So Trello is definitely, or some other productivity app is like just make sure that you're tracking your interviews. It's really easy to forget about them, or just come up on the interview and realize you don't have any way to get a hold of them and miss it. Like this is something that happens to us regularly. So that's why we just provide all the information that we can on Trello before the interview happens. And if you're doing it for yourself, it's a smart thing to do for sure once you start pulling in the confirmations and stuff. So
Yeah, I love Trello. We
me
use
too.
it for our agency, and we actually teach it in our course, like how to use it if you're doing
Nice.
a podcast. It's like Trello Gold. There's a lot of cool power ups there.
Yes, definitely.
So Connor's here. What's up, Connor?
Hi,
He had a
Connor.
question. He had a question, and it's pretty long. So get ready.
Okay.
It's not all one sentence. Okay, we're good.
Okay. I can't see it,
But
so I'm just relying on you. You're gonna have to read it to me.
okay. You can't see it on the screen.
Mm-mm.
Okay. So hey, Courtney, something for the founding generation of digital nomads, as well as emerging influencers who have achieved a location-independent lifestyle. Oh no, searching. Sorry. Um, these are the ideal guests for my upcoming podcast. Would love some strategies on how I can find these individuals and the most effective ways to reach them. Also, if you know anyone personally who would love to share their story, please send them my way. So I guess he's looking for digital nomads for his podcast.
Oh, well, I have a few people that I could send his way for sure. But I would say in terms of outreach, same tips that I gave for people who are wanting to be a guest. Just make sure that you do your research on the person, you know what I mean? Make sure that you're building the relationship, and before you just say, hey, I want to have you on my show, you know what I mean? So, but that's a little bit different because it's still flattering for somebody to be like, to want to interview you, you know what I mean? So, but yeah, I mean, Connor, I'd love to be connected with you. If you want to just like pop into my inbox, I can definitely send you some people for your show and we can talk about this a little more.
Cool. So how do you make sure that like, how do you audit a podcast to make sure it's in alignment? Like, what are you doing?
Well, we check out their website and their blog, for just kind of the demographics of their audience. I feel like that gives us a really good idea of who they're talking to. We check out ratings and reviews to make sure that they're, you know, a good podcast, they're professional, and that people are listening and all of that, you know what I mean? So, and then from there, it's just making sure that they're professional. And, you know, we work with almost 600 podcasters. So, from medium to extra large size, you know, like extra large size. So, yeah, I mean,
Okay, awesome.
I don't know if I answered your question. I'm trying to
No.
remember.
I'm trying to remember what I asked. Connor says will do. We can wrap up here soon because I know you're a busy person and you got some things planned too.
Yeah, definitely.
So I would like to know what you think 2019 has in store for people who want to be a podcaster or want to get on podcasts. Like, what are you seeing in the market to keep an eye on?
I mean, it's definitely already been exploding since 2017 is kind of when it went really, really mainstream. And I think that we're going to start seeing a lot more people realize what a business tool it is in the podcasting world. I mean, it's been a cool platform, a cool interview platform for a long time. You know, I know a lot of podcasters who have had their shows for 15 years, but people are just realizing what a tool it is and how good it is for business, you know. So that's something that I think is going to start happening more and more as business people are going to be jumping in. People that, you know, never thought they would be in the podcasting world are going to be jumping in, you know. So that's what I predict for that. And I think that people are having fun learning how to promote their podcasts and learning different ways to repurpose the content. And so I think that we're going to see a lot more innovation this coming year as well in those arenas. Yeah,
and things like Alexa and like smart home, those are all fun. So, and also like, this is just like a tip for you as well. I'm seeing like a lot more demand in the corporate world. And that's kind of like a few of our clients that we're trying to get like high retainer. Because it's funny.
Definitely.
It's funny, the people who don't know what you do will usually pay you the most. and usually entrepreneurs kind of know what you do. So last question, I'm curious, like, what's your podcast do you listen to? Like, what's your favorite podcast?
I listen to Satori Prime a lot. Alon
I haven't heard of that.
And Guy Ferdman. They're a lot more, they focus heavily in like the self-help personal development arena. And they're just good friends of mine as well. Adil Amarsi is another one. He does a lot of entrepreneurial stuff. So, I mean, honestly, I listen to the podcasters that I'm friends with.
That's good.
You know what I mean? Like, I love it. It's the funnest industry to be a part of, and just to have those connections. And I listen to a lot of my clients' interviews and stuff. So, it's great. It's awesome. And definitely, if you're not a podcast listener, I would definitely start picking it up. It's a great way to just consume content.
Yeah, it's changed. So a few podcasts have changed my life. It's interesting, this podcast. It's like on their website, what do ayahuasca, meditation, and skydiving have in common? It's kind of a fun headline.
Love it.
Yeah, it's such a pleasure. Like when you, like my clients are literally the people that I like listening to your podcast. It's like I'm pretty lucky with that as well. So is there anything else you want to add or anything you want to give to my audience? Any tips or freebies or anything? Or where to follow you?
You know what? You can find me. I mean, Zippy Content. I have a business page, Zippy Content. Find my personal page. I do have a couple things coming up. I have a live show that I'm starting soon, a Facebook live show where I'm going to be interviewing the podcasters in my network, just exposing them to everybody, showing everybody who we work with. So that's going to be great. But yeah, I mean, just check us out and, you know, ask me any questions if you have any. And I'm really happy to have the opportunity to be on your show. This is an enjoyable interview for sure.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks so much for being on. I'm going to end the live stream, but we can still chat for like a